Welcome on the News Review Belt, and we're joined by Suleimana Brahma, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. And we're going to slice and dice the newspapers. But right before we get into that, this segment is always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Now, they are offering, if you're a man, prostate screening, and if you're a woman, fertility screening for free, gratis. Just make your way to any of their branches, and here's where you can locate them. Here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. You can also locate them in Kumasi, Kronum here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State, there's Tema Community 22, there is Techiman Hanswa and Esiama and Zama. If you'd like to call them, which I suggest you do to make a booking, these are the numbers to call: 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But just the start of the news review. Monday morning, Mr. Brahma, very good morning to you, sir. All right. So we'll try to get Suleimana Brahma on board as we get into very important matters, salient matters, pertinent to our national life. But I'd like to find out from you. Shoot me a message if you're watching the news review. Two issues. The first has to do with, well, all of them have to do with the Thanksgiving of the New Patriotic Party's current crop of executives. Now, they marked a year, an anniversary recently around Atomic at that church. And two things they brought up. One had to do with the leaked tape. I mean, you would have heard that General Secretary Justin Frimpong-Kodia, for example, talking about it, saying, I mean, what is the party going to do about it? It doesn't lie in the belly of the party to do anything about it. And that, you know, it is sad that such a thing has happened and it's being whipped up, so to speak, or being lapped up. And the president has the power to appoint and remove the IGP. Now, some of what he said, of course, about appointing and removing the IGP is true. I mean, I interacted with Professor Kwesi Enning of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, and he said for him, I mean, this did not fetter. It didn't put any manacles on Mr. President to say, you know, because of this, you can't. But of course, there is the court of public opinion, there is perception, and that is where the danger is. So you see, we're talking about Mr. President and what he can and cannot do. But when you have a tape like this out there with big wigs within your party, with people within the police system purportedly planning, scheming, in cahoots to oust the IGP because the signals he is giving don't look good, don't bode well for your party, you cannot take that for granted. So while I agree that Mr. President can sack the IGP, and it wouldn't be the first time that would happen, or in fact replace him, we must look at the scope of the matter properly, look at the wide array of consequences that could bring to bear. It also has to do with politics and how we play it. Now, you look at the New Patriotic Party and how it is responding to this leaked tape. Oh, I mean, look at Ambrose Derry, the Interior Minister. It's nothing. It's not real. It's not factual. After which checks had he conducted at the time? So the way we play politics with everything is clearly playing out in this instance. Would the New Patriotic Party, if that party had been in opposition, or if even while in power, it had been seen that maybe the other side or any of the other political parties had been scheming on the back of something similar to this, how would the New Patriotic Party have responded? And there you have it, the hypocrisy of our politics. But there was also talk by the chairman of the party, Stephen Ayesu Tim, in terms of the position, so to speak, of the party on LGBTQI++. I found it curious because while in Parliament, the majority side, together with the minority side, had formed some sort of caucus, there was consensus as far as the bill, the anti-gay bill, is concerned. But in the party, there has been dissent in the past. In fact, that bill going through Parliament faced some hurdles on the back of some comments that had been passed initially, which led to some of the processes and then the hearings in Parliament from different sides and all of that. And of course, infamously, we had Mr. President in that interview talk about it is bound to happen. I mean, these things no one forgets. So, Mr. Ayinsu Intim, is that the official position of your party, or is it that you are the executive and so you echo this, maybe some sort of echo chamber on behalf of the party, or is it looking a bit murky, which is why this has come to this point? I don't know. But these are just some thoughts I'd like to put out there. You can share what you think with me in the course of this review. But let's now get into the papers and the Daily Graphic as well. I'll be starting off when we have Mr. Brimer join the conversation. Then we shall take it from there. Bank of Ghana adds 7.70 tons of gold to reserves. Of course, we're talking about the gold for oil situation that we've been touting for a while now. There's also Graphic GCB Bank PLC strengthen collaboration. And there's nation needs emergency energy plan. That's according to the World Bank. We heard of that Deputy Minister, Herbert Crapper, talking about the fact that we need to use more electric vehicles in the country. Well, that story there as well. On the back page, medical waste treatment plant commissioned in Kumasi. All of those stories making the headlines. So let's get into it. We'll start from page 16. Two of our main stories there, or maybe let me rather start from page, the front page leading to page 3, and then I'll go to page 16. So the nation needs emergency energy plan, and that's a warning from the World Bank. So the World Bank has advised the government to implement an urgent emergency energy action plan to address challenges in the country's energy sector. The World Bank Managing Director in charge of operations, Anne Bierde, who made the call, said the country's problems in the energy sector were very serious and would get worse with debilitating effects on economic growth if not addressed. That's the catch. If not addressed. And that's why some of us have been very concerned about the IPP arrangements and the way forward. We actually need more of these independent power producers. But of course, you cannot do that without the wherewithal. So she also says, once the problems are at the level that Ghana has, if not arrested and addressed with an emergency action plan, things will get worse, and this will cost the state more to keep the energy sector running at a time money is needed for other things. She stated this during an interaction with journalists in Accra last Friday to end her 3-day visit to the country. Ms. Bierde stressed that the emergency energy plan must be comprehensive, robust, and focused on investments in metering, billing, and efficient collection of revenue to ensure a vibrant sector. She underscored the need for the Ministries of Energy, Finance, and Gender and Social Protection to work together to ensure that the implementation of the energy plan was done in a manner that protected vulnerable groups as well. So, a lot of talk about energy. Look, if you, across the world, developing countries tend to be more vulnerable when it comes to energy-related matters. When you look at our trajectory, the range of electrification over the years, over the decades, what, for example, the Rawlings administration added on, may his soul rest in peace, rural electrification had been, very low. We added to this. We brought on subsidies. We took away the subsidies. And now we've got to this point where we're supposedly paying through the nose, for utilities, including electricity. But we've been told that's the way to go. However, having dealt with different shades of doomsor, a bit of it under Rawlings, more of it under Kufuor, some of it under Atta Mills, and the height of it, if you like, under Mahama. And it's being dealt with. I keep saying that it will be unpardonable for us to go back to doomsor. No one lives in reverse. You don't walk backwards, do you? So if you solve a problem and you go back, and this same administration told us time and again, though we know at 2021 we didn't have excess capacity, but they told us right from 2017, excess capacity, excess capacity. What did we pump it into? Now Herbert Krapper, the deputy minister, is saying it is even good because we can harness energy or electricity for electric cars. I don't know whether he's got the memo that we don't have any excess capacity anymore. But whatever it may be, we even need more of these independent power producers. How do we do that? How do we ensure that our energy mix is what will reflect our needs, not just financial needs, but national needs across the spectrum? So these are things I am hoping the sector minister, NAPO, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, is solidly contemplating, because Ghana will not pardon any administration, not just this administration, any administration, if we go back into the days of Dumso. That's the simple point I want to make here. Let me at this point welcome aboard Suleimana Brima. He's Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Good morning, Suleimana. I'm sure you may have to unmute. By the way, I have a smock very similar, in fact, practically the same color as yours this morning. Maybe someday we'll decide to twin on the show if it's a Friday. Welcome aboard. So far, I've spoken about three matters. Maybe you could chime in. The first has to do with the first anniversary of the MPP's crop of executive, that is national executives, and the talk by Justin Frimpong Kodria that the leaked tape is really not much. The MPP is not going to investigate anything. That what do they have to investigate? And the reaction generally from the party. Then there's the party chairman, Stephen Ayesu Tim, on LGBTQ, saying that the stance of the party is not for it. But I find that a bit interesting on the back of it is bound to happen by Mr. President, that comment, and comments even in Parliament on the back of the anti-gay bill when it was brought to the fore the first time. I've also just been talking about the World Bank. In fact, their director focusing on energy matters, I believe it's Anne Biarde, says we either get our act together or we're going to be facing some severe challenges. In fact, she says the country's problems in the energy sector are serious and would get worse with debilitating effects. Do you have any thoughts on these matters before we proceed, Suleimana?
Well, Ben, good morning once again. Let me start with the energy sector issues, because I think invariably, if we are into it, it affects literally every aspect of our economy. I am not in that sector, and I have very limited knowledge in the area, but there have been several occasions where I've been part of conversations involving persons that I would say are experts in that area, or at least whose work focus on the energy sector. And if you listen to the analysis, you get scared about what the future holds. It does then appear that, in fact, a lot of the problems that we have in terms of our economic indicators and all of that is because our energy sector is so much in debt. And it appears that over time, governments have played rhetoric over the energy sector challenges. And it's not just previous governments, but this government. Again, like you said, this government came in with the information that, well, the previous government may have even invested in energy generating machinery that were not basically needed because we have excess capacity. And Dumso, whether we are in Dumso or we are not going back to Dumso, has been one of the issues that especially the vice president has been saying, even though I would continue to say that in terms of Dumso, it was ended by the Mahama regime. I don't think that the MPP regime has done anything extraordinary to claim credit for ending Dumso. But as I said, they prefer to do gimmicks with the energy sector issues rather than really focusing on the issues. I think that the current energy minister, Napo, is someone that I do have confidence in, but sometimes it's not about the minister. It's about what comes from the top, the powers that be. And I'm just hoping that the powers that be would allow things to work so that eventually we don't get ourselves into the situation that we are all praying to avoid. Um, on the leaked tape, I think there's a lot to it. The IGP is doing the best that he can. Yesterday, I was reading that the folks or the suspects have been arrested in connection with the shooting incident that happened a few weeks or so ago that resulted in the killing of the police officer at the fuel station. And that, I said to myself, was quite impressive because even one of the suspects was arrested in a community in Togo because they had done some collaboration with the Togolese Interpol. And so what we need is an efficient police force that would give us peace, order, security, and stability. And I believe both the NPP and the NDC and all Ghanaians must be interested in that. So if we all believe that the IGP, the current IGP, is doing the best that he can to give us what we need, then any attempts to sort of undermine him is worth investigating. And that is why I believe that all parties must take interest in this, but of course, do so without the needless partisanship or politicking that sometimes is introduced.
So briefly, Suleimana, when you look at the rhetoric, right from the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, and how he said, this is nothing, right from the start, to Justin Frimpong Kodia saying, you know what, but what do you want us as a party to do? Samuel Mbura of our political desk put that question to him. So what is your party going to do about it? And he said, we have no locus here. What do you want us to do? What investigation? Nothing. But is that posture the right one?
Well, I think as a political party, maybe it's right to say that, I mean, what would they have to investigate? If it's a national security issue, if it's a matter that, because NDC as opposition cannot say that we are investigating. So therefore, can MPP as a party say that we are investigating this? If we do that, then indeed we are getting into what I say we should avoid, which is the partisanship. It shouldn't be an MPP NDC affair. If you read my article that I wrote last week about this development, I said that I was surprised that the NDC would want to relate this into the elections and buy into the whole agenda that an IGP can help a party rig an election. What for me is important is that it didn't just involve one police officer. As far as we are told and we've heard, it involved a number of police officers. We are told one of them is on terminal leave, so just within the next 4 months, he's out of the service. But there are others who may be active in the service going forward. And that is why it is important to investigate. Officers in uniform who believe that what is right to do is to orchestrate for a political party rather than serve, in the interest of the nation and also serve in accordance with the principles of policing. And I think that certainly has to be investigated. And last week or so, I heard Parliament took a decision that they would want to get investigations conducted into the matter. So for political parties, I really don't know what they can do.
Well, and on the issue of LGBT, Stephen Intim, the general, the party's chairman, saying, this is the party's stance. What is it relevant? Is it irrelevant? And the different dynamics at play, the vacillation, was there a need for that?
Well, I
just very briefly on that, so we get into the.
I haven't heard him, but I suppose he's saying that the party's position is not is not against the bill.
No, it's not against the bill. Yes, that's right.
The party is for the bill.
Yes. Well,
I think that what a lot of people have been saying, which I endorse, is that we should be quite cautious in the way we are approaching the bill. We shouldn't drive it with emotions. It is important to reflect. And so far, it appears to me, because of the overwhelming support that Ghanaians may have for the bill, or indeed anything that would seek to say, look, we don't want LGBTQ practice in our society, there's a lot of emotional sentiments being expressed in relation to the legislation. What people are saying is, this is a matter that has implications for human rights, and therefore, let us be careful. Let us not push it through with emotions. And of course, the political parties, the individuals, I believe sometimes it's also about what is it that when I do, I'll get overwhelming support from my people. And so I at this stage, I mean, I obviously will not support. I mean, will not be surprised that a party like the NPP or NDC would take the position that they are taking, because they will see it as almost suicidal to say that, look, we are against the bill. But like I said, it's a matter that is about human rights, and it's important that we are cautious in the way we approach it and do it devoid of emotions. Maybe we should hasten quite a bit slowly so that we can listen to all sides, we can listen to all the views, even if we are opposed to whatever contrary views that are being expressed. It is important to listen so that at the end, if we're going to have a piece of legislation on this matter, it will be one that indeed is solid, is robust, and doesn't really impact negatively on our society in terms of human rights and all of that.
Thank you so much, Sulemana, for your initial thoughts. Let's get into those other stories. Bank of Ghana adds 7.70 tons of gold to reserves, and the Bank of Ghana has added that number of tons of gold to the country's reserves as at the end of last month. The governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has stated the measure, which is part of the central bank's domestic gold purchase program, is aimed at increasing gold as the asset cover in the country's reserves to provide additional buffers to help the economy withstand economic shocks. And we're still facing some of those shocks. Now, there's also, there was another story which was meant to be on page 16. Oh, it is, but let me look at other stories then, apart from that one. ECOWAS appoints Baba Kamara to help fight terrorism. He's a former Ghanaian National Security Advisor. And a former Ghanaian National Security Advisor, Baba Kamara, has been appointed as a high-level official by the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS to assist in monitoring the implementation of counter-terrorism efforts and report regularly to the authority. Mr. Kamara is also expected to bring his experience as former National Security Advisor in Ghana and as a former Ghana ambassador to Nigeria, among others, to bear on the Commission and member states to deal decisively with the canker. Of course, the bit about terrorism and the landscape and recent happenings and the unrest in our country and the picture that is painted about Ghana and stemming the tide of same are crucial. So we can only wish him the very best. Of course, he's representing the continent, but also representing us as a people. Any reactions to these two stories, and then we move on?
Well, I would say that's a positive development. At this stage, one of the biggest, certainly the biggest, not actually one of the biggest crisis confronting our region is the issue of instability from the activities of fundamentalists and terrorists and all of that. And the ECOWAS has a major role to play. At this stage, with this appointment, what I would say is that Ghana as a country, in terms of our representation at ECOWAS, is at the forefront, because within ECOWAS, it is the division that is in charge of political affairs, peace and security, that is at the forefront of this. And remember, the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security is Dr. Musa Fatao, who is a Ghanaian. So at that level, in terms of the administrative level, Ghana is at the forefront. And now we have a Ghanaian who has also been appointed to lead the effort as a high-level official. But let me also add that I think there must be something unique about Ghana, because if you know, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers is also the AU envoy on silencing the guns in Africa. So at this critical moment, it is Ghanaians who are on the front lines.
The momentum is with us, eh?
Exactly. And we need to really give them all the support, because I think it is both a recognition, a privilege, and something that we really have to give them the support in order for them to succeed, because their success would also reflect on us as a nation.
For sure it will. Now, the final newspaper is next, and then we'll get into the Daily Guide quickly. Mining as a catalyst for industrialization is focus of our policies. That's according to Samuel Abu-Jinapor, Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. I will resource grassroots to lead 2024 campaign. That's according to Dr. Kotu Afriye. Presidential Special Initiatives is the brainchild of Alan. That's according to Nyama. And the other day, of course, we've had quite a conversation on this, but Ghana gets first ultra-modern medical waste treatment plant. I brought you that story from the Daily Graphic. And MPP is against LGBTQI+. Intim declares and warns NDC to stop tagging MPP with it. And that we've also looked at. So let's quickly look at the stories on pages 4 and 8. And you've already made mention of the Ablekuma bullion van robbery and the suspects that have been arrested, so I'll not go there again. But the Presidential Special Initiatives introduced in the erstwhile Kufuor government is the brainchild of Alan Tremating, Mr. Richard Nyama, Deputy Spokesperson, I beg your pardon, of MPP flag bearer hopeful Alan Tremating has said. So he is touting Alan Tremating as the brain behind that policy. Of course, nowadays, a lot of those contesting are laying claim or staking claim to a number of things they have done in the party. And that is what is being said about Alan Tremating. Let me very quickly go to the other story. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. Samuel Abu-Jinapor, says policies and programs being implemented by government aims to transform mining into a catalyst for industrialization. He said government remained committed to working with the private sector to adopt strategies to achieve this noble objective. But for me, when I look at our mining in this country, now we're talking lithium and all of that, I shudder, because what we've done with what we have is very cold comfort when it comes to managing our resources, especially in terms of mining. Quick reactions?
Well, the mining sector would perhaps for a long time remain a critical sector for our economy and for the economic survival of many across the country. Now, I know if you take Upper East, for example, it has now become one of the biggest mining hubs, if not the biggest in the country today. Upper West is about same. You talk about the lithium, which is also building up. The problem is how we have managed the sector over the years. And as you know, the other day somebody was telling me about the Black Volta River, or is it a White Volta? And the fact that you go and look at it now and you see obvious pollution at high levels. We know about the Ankobra story. We know about the Pra story and so on. So it appears that the more we are mining, the more we are killing our rivers, the more we are destroying our environment. And in the end, we may have the money, but the money may not be able to help us survive, because the environmental devastation and its consequences in terms of health would be something that is really unbearable. And I don't think that any amount from gold would help us come out of such a devastation. So I believe that our government must really work on this issue, because over time, all we've been hearing is the rhetoric, mining policy, mining this, mining that. The Minerals Commission, I believe, is doing the best that it can. But sometimes, as I said, it's also powers from above. And so it is an area that we really have to continue to be genuine in the policy issues that we raise, and truly and honestly implement policies in fair ways, so that we can save our environment even as we try to exploit the natural endowment that God has given us.
Let's look at these two papers as we get ready to wrap. The Daily Guide, Educhum endorses Bawumia. Yes, the Education Minister, Dr. Yao Osei Educhum, has endorsed the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. And there's also 4 arrested over Ablekuma cop killing. Bank of Ghana increases gold reserves. Forest guard goes missing and 2 perish in mining pit. Suleimana, you could link it to those two. You know that story from the Ashanti region where 2 people. There were 3, but one was very quick, escaped, but 2, unfortunately, losing their lives, tied to what you were talking about on the Volta in terms of illegal mining. But let's look at this one on page 3. So Dr. Yawase Educhu, Minister of Education and Member of Parliament for the Ashanti Region's Bosomtwe constituency, has endorsed Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia for the New Patriotic Party's flag bearership. Dr. Educhum's endorsement comes ahead of a special college election to choose 5 of the 10 aspirants for the ruling party's presidential primary in November this year. I'd like to find out from you, Suleimana, what do you make of big wigs in the party throwing their weight between or behind this candidate or that candidate on the back of what was said initially about, not showing face, so to speak, for this or that candidate? And what could it mean when the expression I want to use, when all is said and done and one becomes leader of the party, what could this mean in terms of disunity or unity for the MPP?
Well, many have said that what is going to be the biggest problem for the MPP is how they get together post-Congress and post the election of flag bearer. Initially, there was that directive or policy that people should not pitch camp, or at least people should not indicate where they are in order to ensure that there's stability and unity within the party. But at this stage, it is no secret that Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is the establishment candidate. He is the candidate for the, the establishment, the Kufuado, the government machinery is behind Dr. Bawumia, and that is not a secret. Now, the other thing is that as a result of that, it's almost like if you are an appointee of the president, almost like you must fall in line. I've seen Peter Amewu, Minister for Railways Development, obviously campaigning for Alan, but that's a very rare one. The majority of appointees and those in power, those in parliament, are obviously supporting Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. The other thing is that there are also those who are supporting particular candidates with a view that if the candidate should get elected, then they can be considered for the running mate position. And again, on this matter, it is no secret that Dr. Educhum is one of those who is sort of desperately seeking to position himself for the running mate slots in the event that Dr. Bawumia wins. In fact, if you do a deeper analysis, you would even get to the point where you realize that certain churches are also pitching camps to ensure that in the event this person or that person wins,
they'll also get their share.
Their church member will be pushed to become the running mate. And in fact, I am told that Dr. Educhum is one of those that is being backed by a particular church. I wouldn't name that, but I'm sure at some point we would bring all those things out.
I see.
So it's not surprising to see ministers like him saying they support Dr. Bawumia, because at this stage it appears that the momentum is for Bawumia.
Okay.
I don't know whether that would mean that he would win or he would not win.
Mr. Brima, we have to go. There's no peace without justice in Sudan. That's on page 5 of the paper. And there's also the Ghanaian publisher, Battle Against Streetism, Supreme Court to give verdict in November. That's something that we'll definitely have more time to talk about later. But Mr. Brima, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
I wish you same. I have to do this one for our very own Kofi J of research desk, and he says it's my good friend's birthday. The name is Lance Corporal Amwa Dominic. Lance Corporal Dominic Amwa. You are a military officer with the 64 Infantry Regiment in Burma Camp. Your good friend Kofi J is celebrating you this morning. Lance Corporal Dominic Amwa. Of course, this segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They are offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening. Locate them here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi Kronomabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrady Anaji State Tema Committee 22, Techiman Hanswe and Siamanzama. You can call them on 0244 867 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next.